What's going on, everybody? My name is Colton. Happy Thanksgiving week, and welcome to my Week 13 NFL picks. Thanksgiving week is always one of the most exciting weeks and weekends of football of the entire season. It really gets into that playoff mode for many teams. So we have a great slate ahead, a great Thanksgiving slate in particular with 3 great games. Break those 3 down as well as the entire rest of Week 13. First, let's take a quick look back at week number 12 because I got to say it's been like a 4-week stretch of very average picking. I went 7-7 last week again, just very mid. Lost my lock of the week in the Detroit Lions minus 10.5. This is why I didn't heed my own advice. Taking the 10.5 point favorite as your lock is not a smart idea, and it proved exactly why there, as Jameis Winston, the Giants kept it very close. Let's take a quick look back. I threaded the needle very nicely with that Steelers-Bears game. I said the Bears would win, but I took the Steelers plus 3.5, and it was exactly that. That was great. The Lions, which I just mentioned, was a brutal spot because I really thought Detroit would put it to the Giants, and they just simply didn't. They looked lost for a lot of the game. Jahmyr Gibbs was the only guy absolutely cooking from start to finish. He had over 200 yards from scrimmage. Vikings have a serious J.J. McCarthy problem. The Packers rolled there. The Chiefs, this is what I mean when you lay points with the Chiefs. They don't always cover. They find ways to win a lot, but they didn't cover the number. The Ravens didn't cover by half a point. Not much to say there. That was kind of a brutal beat. The Seahawks were covering the whole way. Probably should have covered as well, but the back door was open and the Titans scored late. Bengals had a 10-point lead early. They were threatening to win that game. They kept it close. Shedeur Sanders and the Browns had a nice win over the Raiders. The Jaguars tried so many times to throw away the game against the Cardinals, but they ended up holding on. The Cowboys was the lucky one for me. They came all the way back and ended up winning outright after falling behind 21-0. Biggest regret pick of the week is the Saints. I knew a couple minutes into that game, I was like, I'm on the wrong side here. The Falcons are a better team still. I don't know what I was doing. Betting the Saints as a favorite, just not the smartest play there. Buccaneers, Baker gets hurt, but even with Baker, they were not going to be in that football game. And then the 49ers rolled. I think I said 24-6 it would be with the Niners and the Panthers. It ended up being 20-9, so I was pretty spot on there. So 7-7 overall, not fantastic. It does bring the season record to 99-79, so just maintaining that 20 games over 500, which not horrible, but definitely want to keep increasing that. Again, it's been a very stagnant few weeks for me. The locks have become a problem after starting 5-1. You see there 6-6, not ideal. All-time record 399 and 316. So we'll look for a win number 400 since I started doing this in 2023. And then the locks 27, 20, and 1. All right, but that's enough about that. Let's get into this Thanksgiving slate that is pretty juicy. We start with the Packers and the Lions, and right off the bat, we get an absolute treat. Weird that it's starting at 1 o'clock. I like the 12:30 tradition of Thanksgiving. They always start, but that's weird, but whatever. The Lions are short favorite at home. Both these teams coming off wins. The Lions had to work a lot harder for theirs as they struggled, like I said, against the Giants. I'm going to go with Detroit here, as you can see. Packers are getting Josh Jacobs back, so I know fantasy owners will be very happy about that. He should have a pretty good day against this Lions defense, but I do trust Detroit's offense right now more. The Packers really haven't had too many spots where the offense from start to finish clicks. The Lions still have shown that ability to dominate teams, particularly at home. Of course, that's why I was on them last week, and they ended up struggling. But I just trust as we get down the stretch here that Detroit's really going to round into form. I think I originally had the Packers to win the division after the Micah Parsons trade, and I immediately kind of regretted it. I think Detroit is still the best team in the NFC North. I think they will prove that on Thanksgiving. The Packers defense does scare me a bit. I think they can cause some issues for Jared Goff, but I think get the ball into Jahmyr Gibbs' hands, always going to be a good thing. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown to have a good day, and I think the Lions put on a nice show on Thanksgiving. I think this will be a close game. I don't think they're going to run away with it, but I do think they can cover that number and get out of there with a win at Ford Field. All right, a really fun one in Dallas. I know a lot of people hate the Cowboys. I know a lot of people love the Cowboys, but they're entertaining to watch. They're playing at home against the Chiefs, who finally rebounded. This is just a great game. I think this is the best game of the week. The Chiefs are minus 3.5 on the road. And if you've been following my picks this year, you probably knew I was going to be on the Cowboys here. I kind of have swayed back and forth on them. Now, as they've continued to win, I'm kind of back on the Cowboys, particularly their offense. But the defense has played so much better since the addition of Quinnen Williams. They're starting to finally figure some things out. We saw what they did against the Eagles in that second half last week. They can create turnovers in this game and just limit Patrick Mahomes' time on the field. I think the time possession has to be in favor of Dallas here. You don't want long sustained drives for Kansas City, but you also want to avoid the deep shots to Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. So I think the Cowboys are going to play this smart. I think they can keep this game close. I'm still back and forth on if they're going to win this game, but I think we're going to get a Thanksgiving classic here. I think the 3.5, I have to be on that side. We've seen so many times when I take the Chiefs minus 3.5 or by that hook and they don't cover. I just don't like being on them as a favorite. Taking them back-to-back weeks against the Broncos and the Colts, and they didn't cover either time. I'm going to try my luck with the Cowboys. I think George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb both have great days. I would look at their anytime touchdowns because I think this Cowboys offense is going to continue to hum. and I wouldn't be surprised if they get the win at home. All right, next up, I'm kind of getting baited into doing this because the Joe Burrow return, plus 7.5 on the road against a Ravens offense that hasn't looked great. It's a little sketchy because I feel like a lot of people are going to be shifting to the Bengals just because he's back, but I'm going to do it anyway. The 7.5 is just too big of a number for a Ravens team that I really do like how well their defense is playing now after a really brutal start to the year, but Lamar is still not 100%. Clearly, he's not as explosive as we know he is capable of being, and I just think, listen, the Bengals have kept games close with Joe Flacco. Assuming Joe Burrow is not completely rusty, obviously he'll have some kinks to work out, but if he can get back into a even 80% Joe Burrow form, I think this game is going to be a lot of fun. I think the last 4 times the Bengals have played the Ravens have won every single one of them, but they've been all like under a field goal, under 4 points, whatever. They always play competitive games, usually high scoring as well. I'm not sure if this one's going to get crazy high scoring, but when the Bengals defense is involved, it's always possible. But I think, no T. Higgins likely, but Jamar Chase is back. I think Burrow and Chase will form that connection early. Chase Brown is a guy I think in fantasy that really needs to continue to get going. We've started to see some flashes of what he was supposed to be. I think this is another spot where he can get some receptions as well in this game. They're going to be limited on weapons with the T. Higgins injury, so look for Chase Brown out of the backfield. I think he has a decent day. And I just think the Bengals hang around, make this game a little bit tough on Baltimore. The Bengals low-key aren't dead, even at 3-8, just because the Ravens and Steelers are both sitting there with 6 wins, and they have schedules that aren't the easiest. And the Bengals go in and play the Ravens twice still. The Steelers have the Bills this week. If the Bengals win this game and the Steelers lose to Buffalo, suddenly they're 2 games back with still another game to play against Baltimore. I think, this is the last desperate. Clearly, Joe Burrow is coming back. This is the last shot for the Bengals to make this season what they expected it to be. So I think the Bengals make this game a lot of fun. So I think this Thanksgiving slate in general, all 3 games are going to be close, competitive, and really entertaining to watch. All right, our Black Friday game this year is the Bears and the Eagles. And listen, I have to go with the Bears here, plus 7.5. They have shown too much to be underdogs by that much. I'm still not completely sold that they're going to win playoff games. I still don't trust them as a favorite. But getting 7.5 against an Eagles team that just simply cannot figure it out from quarter 1 to quarter 4, I have to take the Bears here. Does it feel like a little bit of a trap like the above game? Yes, a little bit. But I don't want to be on the side laying 7.5 with an Eagles offense that just hasn't been able to figure it out. I sound like a broken record here, but A.J. Brown finally started getting going, but the run game continued to struggle. I think there's a lot of frustrations in Philadelphia, maybe a little unwarranted. They're 8-3 coming off a Super Bowl year. I mean, they still are in the driver's seat of a division that they're more than likely going to win with the Cowboys, Commanders, and Giants. So I don't think the roof is falling for Philadelphia, although in Philadelphia it tends to crack a little earlier. I think Caleb Williams is just going to be smart in this game. We saw that brutal play where TJ Watt ragdolled him in the end zone and it caused a touchdown. They got to avoid those situations, because if you do that on the road in a tough place to play, then things could unwind quickly. But I think Ben Johnson will have a good game plan here, and I think the Bears will hang around. All right, a very interesting one here. 49ers at the Browns. The Browns are plus 5.5. Now, this pick here on the Browns is simply because I trust the defense a lot to keep this game close. I don't trust Shedeur Sanders in that offense just yet. I need to see more, but he did have a decent day against the Raiders. He made some plays, made some throws down the field. And the Niners, listen, Brock Purdy just doesn't look right. Now, I have been, if you watch the quarterback ranking I did with Jones and C-Boys, you know that I was very vocal about thinking Brock Purdy was overrated to begin with, but he looks worse than even what I thought. He's clearly not 100%. He's making terrible throws, overthrowing people, sailing balls over people's heads. He turned the ball over 3 times in that Carolina game. Luckily, it was Carolina, and they didn't end up threatening. But against a Browns defense with Myles Garrett chasing the sack record, I think he's got to be sharper, and I'm just not sure he's going to be here. I think the Browns are live to win this game outright. I'll take the 5.5. Shedeur Sanders, just don't make too many mistakes, and I think Cleveland can have a nice day. All right, I really like this one. The Titans plus 6.5 at home. Now, I know you can say, how can you possibly like the Titans in any spot? If you watched that Jacksonville Jaguars game last week, there is some real concerns with that Jaguars offense, and Trevor Lawrence continues just to make very ill-advised decisions, and every game he has 2 or 3 throws that make no sense, 2 or 3 decisions that are just out of nowhere, and I just don't, when you're laying 6.5 on the road, Jaguars haven't had a ton of success down in Tennessee. I don't know, this just has a recipe for a possible upset. Maybe the Jaguars win the game, but I'm comfortable taking the 6.5. Cam Ward has shown some flashes. Obviously I watched every snap of the Seahawks last week, and I was a little bit wow, he's making a lot of plays. I thought the Seahawks would absolutely stomp them, and down the stretch, even in the fourth quarter when the Seahawks have an amazing pass rush and they were just pinning their ears back and going after him, and he was still converting third downs, fourth downs, they were making plays. So if he can do a little bit against that Jaguars defense, I think the Titans can be live to win this game, much like the Browns. So give me the Titans. I know it's a risky combo, Browns, Titans, but give me both of them to keep the games close in their respective homes. All right, saying that CJ Stroud is expected to return this Sunday, I really hope he does, because if I'm on the Texans with Davis Mills, I feel a little bit worse about this pick. But again, this is a more defensive-driven pick. The Texans defense is a top 3 unit in the league. Maybe the best unit in the league. And similar to a lot of these other teams that I think can win games, I don't trust laying 3.5 with Daniel Jones and the Colts right now. They're still a great team. I'm not saying the Colts are frauds. I think they'll run the ball as much as they can with Jonathan Taylor to try to neutralize this pass rush. But this just has the makings of an AFC South close battle. I think the Texans can win this game. This is a very important game for Houston, who has won some games in a row now, are at 6-5, are in the thick of this in the AFC. So I think they need to put on a solid performance on the road against a division foe, and if they can win this game, they are very live to win the division as well. So I think Houston has a good showing. I would start those Texans weapons like Nico Collins. I would look at Dalton Schultz. The Colts playmakers, you obviously have to start Jonathan Taylor, probably Tyler Warren, maybe Michael Pittman Jr., but I'd be very weary against this Texans defense that is just ready to feast week in and week out. All right, Saints and the Dolphins. I'm kind of done with the Saints. I'm taking the Dolphins -5.5. You don't feel great laying that type of number with the Dolphins, but they're off a bye week. They looked decent in Spain at times. I don't know. I just trust their offense far more than the Saints offense, and that this is a low bar at this point. So the Saints really frustrated me, like I alluded to earlier. Tyler Shuck, I'm not sure what they have there. I guess they'll have to continue to see for the rest of the season, but I think the Dolphins will play for Mike McDaniel's job. Devon Achane is still quietly having a fantastic season. Get Jalen Waddle some targets. I think both of them have really good days, Waddle and Achane, so make sure if they're for some reason not in your lineup, make sure you get them into your fantasy lineup, because I think they will feast, and I think the Saints just won't do a whole lot. I'm thinking 34-10. I think the Dolphins roll at home. All right, tricky one here, but I think the Falcons are still, they have just the smallest of hopes to still make the playoffs. They're in a division that's probably the worst in football. You're going to a New York Jets team that isn't playing for any postseason aspirations, so I think the Falcons will get a little bit more out of Kirk Cousins, really make the most of what Kirk Cousins has left in his career. I am worried because Drake London's going to be out, it looks like. That's a big hit, but Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, they'll just have to step up and just lean on Bijan Robinson. And I think if the Falcons don't make a lot of dumb mistakes, and if there's not a lot of special teams mishaps, I think the Falcons are still the better roster, and I think they can go into New York and win by a field goal. Don't feel great about it, but I'm not taking the Jets here. All right, Baker Mayfield's status is still in question as of recording this on Wednesday, but either way, I think I'm going to take the Cardinals +3.5. The Bucs have some serious issues, and of course, it all revolves around injuries mainly, but I'm just not sold on them being a 3.5-point favorite against most teams at this point, especially if Baker Mayfield doesn't end up playing. Now, Teddy Bridgewater is a capable backup, probably one of the better backups you'd want to have. But there's a backup on the other side, Jacoby Brissett, who's playing pretty good football. He's making smart decisions. He's pushing the ball down the field. He had the 47 completion game a couple weeks ago. They almost beat the Jaguars last week. I think they might run into one of these wins, and what better spot against an injury-riddled Buccaneers team. Marvin Harrison's still questionable. If he doesn't go, Michael Wilson's become an automatic start in fantasy. He's getting ridiculous amounts of targets. I think that'll continue probably regardless if Harrison plays or not. So definitely look to him. I think he has another big day against this Buccaneers defense that has left much to be desired. So give me the Cardinals +3.5 with a real chance at winning this game. Tough one here. I really wanted to pull the trigger on the Panthers because this is a letdown spot and a bounce back spot for the Panthers, but I didn't see enough from Bryce Young, man. I know the Panthers have been the most Jekyll and Hyde team in the National Football League this season, arguably. They've gone up and down, but I don't think they're going to come back up for this game. I think the Rams are just too good right now. The Seahawks and Niners are still breathing down their necks. I think they need to continue to take advantage of teams like this. So I'm going to lay the 10.5. Could I see it being an ugly, scrappy 16-13 in the fourth quarter game, and you're like, what's going on? Absolutely. But I also could see a world where it's 21-0 in the first half, and I don't want to be on that side of it. I'd rather lose with the Rams in an unexpected close game than take the Panthers and get absolutely throttled. So give me the Rams -10.5. So much talent on that team. Speaking of so much talent, the Seahawks are -10.5 at home. Of course, I'm rolling with them against the Vikings, who might not have J.J. McCarthy, might have Max Brosmer, but boy, either way, is that a disaster for the Vikings because this Mike Macdonald defense should eat either one of them alive. Now, I did say how Cam Ward had some success, so Seahawks have to clean up some things, but this defense is still amazing. They should still absolutely get after whoever is in the backfield playing quarterback for Minnesota. And then Sam Darnold and JSN will just continue to do their thing on the other side. I would love to see Rashid Shaheed get more involved. They made that acquisition in hopes to give a real downfield threat to go along with JSN. Hopefully they will start to bear the fruits of that acquisition because he really is a playmaker. AJ Barner, Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet, it's hard to tell who to start fantasy-wise because you never really know who's going to get the the large share other than JSN, but I think there will be success to be had outside with guys like Cooper Kupp and Shaheed. So I think the Seahawks are just going to have a great dominant game here at home, and I think they're going to roll to 9-3. Another tricky one here, Bills-Steelers. Aaron Rodgers, the wrist, the hand, whatever, is still up in the air. Either way, I think the Bills have to get right at some point, and I think this is a spot where they can move the ball in this Pittsburgh defense. This secondary has not been great all year. I think they should be able to run the ball a little bit with James Cook, but I think they have to let Josh Allen be Josh Allen here. We're not in the territory where they're like facing must-win games, but if they want to win the division, it's now or never. They need to like possibly win out the way the Patriots are going. So you got to let Josh Allen play like it's a playoff game. Let him scramble. Let him rip it down the field. I think this is an opportunity where the Bills can flex their muscles, win this game by like 17, and really reassure everybody that this is still the Buffalo Bills. If they go in here and barely win or lose outright, like this is a game that could really start to tilt the narrative for Buffalo, and I think they want to avoid that at all costs. So I'm going to take Buffalo. I still believe in them. Pittsburgh is just kind of a mess, just a mid team. Like the definition of mid is that continues to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. It feels like they are every year, and that record kind of reflects that as they hurtle towards another 9-8 season. All right, hold your nose, and I'm going to take the Raiders here, plus 9.5. Yes, it's gross, but the Chargers are still very banged up. That offensive line has just given up unrelenting pressure on Justin Herbert. So you're facing a guy in Max Crosby and a Raiders defensive line that might be able to take advantage of that. Maybe they can force some turnovers, make some plays defensively that can elevate this offense, which the Raiders really might be the worst team in football. Like, I'm seriously starting to believe that. After a team that I thought would win like 7 games and be frisky, they are not that, clearly. They still have playmakers. They still have Genty. They still have Bowers. I think they, like I said about the Cardinals about running into a win, I don't think the Raiders are going to run into a win here, but I think they're going to run into a competitive divisional game. I think they can keep this thing within that 9.5. It is still a big number. And I'm not sure the Chargers are really built to blow teams out right now. They're still a good team, I think. Omarion Hampton might come back very soon. If he comes back for this game, that's a big plus. But still, I don't really trust laying that many points with the Chargers. No really home field advantage. There'll probably be a ton of Raiders fans. I think the Raiders can keep this scrappy as they desperately try to get back into the win column. Probably the trap game of the week, only 6.5 points laying with the Denver Broncos against the Commanders, who I had taken in that Spain game a couple weeks ago. They are off the bye now. You know, Mariota is a capable backup, but I just have to lay the 6.5 for the Broncos. The defense is too good. Now, we have seen a lot of spots this year that Denver has just not laid complementary football between their offense and defense. I think to the overseas game against the Jets where they won 13-11, the game against the Giants, which they had to roar back in the fourth quarter. The Broncos are a sketchy team, especially when you're laying points. I'm not sure I fully buy into them making like an AFC Championship game run. Games like this tell a lot. If they can go into Washington and absolutely prove that they're a bona fide contender, I think that'll be a big step in Bo Nix and this team's progress towards the playoffs. So go into Washington, absolutely take care of business. I think that's very possible, but I'm also fearful of the trap game. I could absolutely see this being a ugly win yet again for the Broncos. So be wary about this one. I wouldn't touch any of the Commanders' skill players in fantasy, but I do think they have an outside shot of keeping this game close. And then Giants and Patriots. I'm taking the Giants plus 7.5. I had a slight inclination to take the Giants outright because I really think the Patriots are going to get upset at some point, but I'm not going to do that. I still think the Patriots are going to win the game. Giants, though, plus 7.5 with how Jameis Winston's slinging it. I think, listen, Giants are a fun team with Jameis Winston. I truly think I'm probably going to say this every week, Jameis Winston should be a starter for somebody because there are several quarterbacks that are worse than him that have starting jobs right now. So I think the Giants can make this game fun on otherwise kind of meh Monday Night Football game after this Thanksgiving slate and some of these Sunday games, but I think this game actually is going to be a lot of fun because Jameis Winston's involved. Wan'Dale Robinson has become probably a must start. I think he will continue to get a ton of targets. Tyrone Tracy might have a decent day here. And I just think the Patriots are, they have the best record in football. I'm not disrespecting them. I think they're probably going to win the division. They're going to make a playoff run. If they get the 1 seed that books them for the divisional round, this is a very real team. I'm not saying they're not, but I don't think I'm going to lay 7.5 with them here. I think the Giants are going to hang around and make this interesting. So give me the New York Football Giants on Monday Night Football. All right, lock of the week, 6-6 right now. I've lost, 5 of 6 or whatever. Where do I go to get back on track? None other than the 1-10 Tennessee Titans. I'm making the Titans my lock of the week. This is like the ultimate trap spot where people are going to be on the Jaguars. This is the Tennessee Titans plus 6.5 at home. Now, I've done this particularly last year, taking the Titans and getting absolutely burned, but I'm ready to do it again. I think the Titans make this game really uncomfortable with Jacksonville, and a game that Jacksonville needs with the 2 teams below here, Texans and Colts, still rolling. So give me the Titans plus 6.5. I think they really can win this game outright. I think they're going to make this game very, very sweaty for Jaguars fans. So give me the Titans. Let's get back on track in locks. That's going to do it for week 13. Happy Thanksgiving again to all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the Sunday slate. Enjoy week 13 and enjoy the NFL season heating up as we hurl towards the playoffs. Thank you all so much. We'll see you very soon. Later.